black people. We swear it. What was going on a million years ago? Crash the fuck out. Programming. Patriarchy just got here yesterday, bro. Wait, what? Crazy, huh? Well. If it isn't a bunch of bad bitches back together again. Oh my gosh. Hi, hello. What's good? Don't tell me, actually. Don't tell me. Because I know. It's dark out there. But it's gonna be okay, babes. I've been doing a little bit of research for the girlies and the gays and the theys and the thems and everybody else. Did I spend my influencer savings on getting field notes for you guys? Yes, I did. And we're gonna get into that and much more. But first, if you're a day one or been rocking with me for a minute, let you down, miss you much, I'm so delighted to be reacquainted. And if you're new here, just wondering, what on earth would ever entice someone to walk away from that kind of munyan? I hope by the end of this video, you too will say, yeah, I guess I would have walked away too. Actually, and that applies to everyone. I wonder, like, what would you have done in this situation? By the time I walked away from my cushy influencer life, I had been creating content for 7 years, and I was super fortunate that pretty much right when I started creating content, I soon after started getting brand deals and got signed by a management company. After this picture of my bedroom went low-key viral for that time, Urban Outfitters, IKEA, Crate and Barrel were in my DMs, on my line. Put this in your house and we'll give you some money. Mind you, at this time, I was a nanny in the city. So I was like, wait, what? Like, you're gonna pay me to do what now? It was a really exciting time for my family, my friends, myself. And influencer marketing at that time had only really been around since 2014, I think, was when the first influencer marketing agency came about. I'm minding my business, having fun, shaking ass, going to brunch, living my life with my friends. And I really think it was right place, right time, because this was also around the time when more and more brands were wanting to hire plus size women and black women and queer people.
So we're the gays. Do we have some in-betweens? Are these our in-betweens?
To seemingly be more inclusive. Just for brief context, prior to becoming a nanny, I had already had multiple different jobs in corporate America. I had already worked in nonprofits and event spaces and marketing. In the last 15 years, I've had 22 different jobs that span 8 different industries. I don't know if it's just in me because of my father, who was an absent father, but he has had over 40 jobs in his life. And a lot of times it's him quitting when he just doesn't want to do something anymore. And I swear to God, that's up in me or something, because I will not do things that I do not want to do for too long. Constantly strategizing. All right, what's the exit plan? Now. I will say yes. Throughout all of these transitions, I didn't have anyone depending on me. I was an unmarried woman. I haven't had that many responsibilities, but with this most recent transition, I definitely had big girl bills now, like big money, big girl bills now, and a certain lifestyle that I had to figure out how to weasel my way out of. But I will say, being raised by a single Black woman and surrounded by other amazing independent women. Also, like, knowing the stories of my grandmothers and great grandmothers who, at a time when women weren't leaving men, they would leave their mans with all their children, and they would do it on their own and in community with their loved ones. I think I've always known whatever life I want to live, all I have to do is choose to live it and then figure it out. So I don't think I've ever been truly afraid of change and transition, because I saw so many examples of people who have not been protected by these systems who still choose differently and live the lives that they want to live. This is another important context as to why I wasn't too afraid to like even consider leaving the amount of money I was making, because I was just broke the other day. By the time I was thinking of leaving this industry, I had only been in it for 4 years, and I remember what my life was like when I was paycheck to paycheck. And honestly, like, yeah, money was tight, but like life was still good. You know what I mean? I still enjoyed my life. Also, growing up, I saw my mom make do with seasons where she did not have it and seasons when she did. We still had a good time. And also there were other things going on that I was like, but we'll get into that. The like height of my influencer career was in 2020, and that's when my best friend and I, who I had met in New York, we ended up moving to LA, and my influencer career was really taking off, especially because every brand was like, we love Black people, we swear it. Tell people, you know, that we love Black people and why our genes remind you of your Blackness. What does this have to do with my Black ass? During 2020, the world was changing for all of us, but being a Black woman in LA during that time, we were seeing more and more Black bodies being brutalized on our screens. Granted, we'd been seeing that since 2012, and as a Black person, I'd been knowing about this reality my whole life, but this was a time where it's like more and more people were being on the front lines trying to do something about it. I started following an activist for the first time. Her name's Erica Hart. They're amazing, and really she planted a lot of seeds for me at the time about like what it looks like to be radically Black, radically honest, and just like standing 10 toes down on the violence that the systems we live under cause. And when I'm speaking of systems, I'm talking about patriarchy, white-bodied supremacy, capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, individualism, the prison industrial complex, the nonprofit industrial complex.
I said, damn, bitch.
The more I looked around, the more I realized like how much I didn't know about how we got to this point, and how we've all been harmed by these systems, and how neglectful they are to future generations and the planet. I hope to share more on this channel eventually about the resources that are really helping us live in ways that better protect our collective good. But for the story's sake, Erica Hart was the first person that I was following who was talking about these things. And then also in 2020, Shelby and I saw the documentary 13th for the first time. Highly recommend if you have not seen that, but that opened my eyes to prison labor. Oh, okay. So a lot of the places we shop at, they're using modern day slavery to make the goods. Oh, love learning this. Then we also saw a documentary called Where to Invade Next, a Michael Moore documentary. And this actually was the second Michael Moore documentary I had seen. A professor had shown me one in a communications class in college called Sicko, and that definitely planted a seed. Regardless, Where to Invade Next opened our eyes to what systems were in place that were federally mandated in other Western countries that actually protect, you know, the greater good of their people and the planet. Different social services, and it was very clear how farther along other places are outside of the US. That was quite startling, but still, like, the money is coming in. I'm working for myself for the first time, so we're just kind of like, okay, we're just gonna keep minding our business. But like, This is the first time I think I'm really experiencing feeling my anger. Actually, no, I started feeling anger when I lived in New York, because working for the 1% in that intimate way, I was like being really exposed to just how drastic the wealth gap was, and it was really disturbing to me, and I didn't have language for it, but I started to finally feel some of my anger. 2020 through 2021, like learning a little bit more about systems, but still pretty deep in the work I was doing. I also got in my first like committed serious relationship at that time. We were long distance. They were in San Diego, I was in LA. Great guy, love him to pieces, will always have love for him. But ultimately, while I was navigating becoming more aware of the world around me and not knowing what to do with all of that information, a lot of it ended up putting strain on our relationship. I think we both just didn't have the tools in our toolbox to navigate the heaviness of what was going on in the world, our own personal undoings, what was going on in our families, and then also a long distance relationship. Yeah, we just did not have the tools in our toolbox. So that ended up, well, we'll get to when that fell apart, but I'm in this relationship, life is good. This is when Shelby and I move into that bougie ass apartment. That place was crazy. Like, what in the world was I doing living in that place? I mean, it was beautiful and it was an amazing time, but the rent was insane. Like, but don't come for me, okay? Your girl went from making $30,000 a year to $60,000 a year to then $400,000. So I was like, well, what's money? Ooh, whoa, whoa. I really, really think our oppressors should have never, ever let my black ass go to fucking Denmark. Things that we have heard that people get over here in Scandinavia for just being born. The human rights they get here, we'd heard about them. When you really see it and hear it from locals, you're then offended and jealous. I feel disrespected.
Can you even believe that they get paid by the government to go to school? School.
It doesn't cost to go to school.
This girl told us this, and we sat there, and we were like,
I think we blacked out. We looked crazy. What? What did you say? Stop, shut up. I'm not saying these places are the ideal standard, but as someone who grew up in the US, the imperial core, someone who also grew up below the Mason-Dixon line where the education system really is not giving what it needs to be giving, I was very unaware of what exists beyond this place and our programming and what they want us to know. And I hadn't really traveled that much. Shelby and I just asked people so many questions. Everyone we met, we wanted to learn about what some of their stressors were. What is your day-to-day life like? What are some of the things that you're overwhelmed by right now? Baby, the answers were cuckoo caca insano. I feel like our brains the entire trip were like glitching because we could not comprehend their reality and the amount of support they get from social services. Mind you, these places have done a lot of extracting of resources from the global south, just like the US, not putting them on a pedestal, but for spaces that are similar to us, like socioeconomically, well, they gotta pay all them taxes. Like, be so fucking for real. We pay more in taxes than they do, and we get not even like 1% of the services that they get. So that scam all fell apart. While Shelby and I were living in that bougie space, I started deconstructing my faith because I was an evangelical Christian at the time. I'd gotten saved when I was in college. Ex-evangelicals, drop down in the chat. I started deconstructing my faith during this time, which was a whole nother wild story, but we do not have time for that today. I also am starting to actually learn about time. Does this make sense? Time. If you're not from the US and aren't aware of our public school education system, the way they teach us about time is very, very like tiny and insular. It's pretty much the American Revolution, slavery, and World War II. Yeah, I honestly pretty much just thought humans have been here ever since when Jesus and his homeboys were bopping around. And I started watching PBS Eons. You know what? Round of applause for PBS, because They got me through my childhood, keeping my brain nice and juicy. Again, here we go. In my 30s, they're here to save the fucking day.
Round of applause, baby, make that ass clap.
They had this series and it would talk about what planet Earth was like through different eons. Again, I'm like having, you know, pretty intense glitches because I'm like, 1,000,000 years? What was going on 1,000,000 years ago? And then to learn that our current modern day form of humans, Homo sapiens, the oldest fossil we have found as of yet is from Africa, from Morocco, and that it's 300,000 years old. I was like, what? I don't understand. I thought we got here 2,000 years ago. Like, even the fact that we say it's the year 2025, programming. Then this is when I found out that like it's a different year in Ethiopia right now. So really the year that it is in time is just determined by what empire is in power at the time and what they said, like, we starting here. During this time, I also started reading a book called When God Was a Woman, and that talked about like the history of matrilineal societies and matriarchal societies. And that's when I learned like, oh, wait a minute. Patriarchy just got here yesterday, bro. Wait, what? Hold the phone, friend. Pick up the phone.
Hey, girl, hey.
Did you know patriarchy got here yesterday? 300,000 years. Patriarchy, 6,000 years. That's 2% of human history.
You ain't nothing but trouble.
First of all, let me give them their flowers because what they've managed to pull off, empires, powers that be, the West, what they've managed to pull off in a pretty short amount of time is quite impressive. And the amount of forgetting that has, you know, successfully happened because we've been in literal survival mode around the world as the West destabilizes, extracts, and destroys the global majority. Crazy, huh? And then to find out that like capitalism has only been on the block for 500 to 600 of those years. Okay. All right. Maybe there's more options than we are realizing that we have. And this is when things start to get even more interesting because all of a sudden I started having very bizarre health issues. And when I started to have my very first like intimate encounters with the US healthcare system, I was in and out of the hospitals in LA in an area called Westwood, which is pretty like affluent, pretty bougie. I was just in a hallway, like not really getting that great of help. And then my bill, the first hospital bill I got from them was $60,000. That's when I was like, wait a damn minute now. All they gave me were some pills and I had like maybe 1 or 2 tests done and I was in a hallway. I wasn't ever even in a room. Oh, so you're a bunch of scammers. Okay. And I managed to get that bill down to 30,000, but now looking back, if I was who I am now, they would have never got that money from me. No, absolutely not.
1 second, hold on. I'm trying to look for a coin.
Ma'am. I highly recommend reading the book Debt, the First 5,000 Years, I think is the name. Very good context to the scam of it all. 2022 is also when my grandpa, my mom's dad, his health started declining, and I'm an only child, my mom's an only child, so our family is very, very small. Wait, let me stop. It wasn't that just my grandpa's health was declining. My grandma on my dad's side, who I was like this with, like that was my day one, ride or die, bad bitch, like love her down, great Gorgina angel baby. Her health was declining the same exact day that we got a call about my grandpa. I get a call from my grandma on the other side of the family of some like horrific things that were happening. Mind you, my ex at that time, we had just been dating for a couple months and he was with me and my family on the East Coast when we got all this news. So our relationship like immediately got very serious, and the health issues I was having really popped off during this same trip where we found out about my grandpa and my grandma. I'm in and out of hospitals in LA. I'm in and out of hospitals in a predominantly black and brown area in the DMV, which is the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And I'm like, well, this doesn't make any sense. And I'm just seeing a lot of the neglect that is happening in black and brown communities, which I had always known about because my family, my dad, like have always lived in predominantly black and brown areas. And so when I would spend summers and weekends and all of these things, yes, I was seeing this stuff, but at that time I wasn't studying systems of oppression and I was a bebe. I didn't understand anything. Now I'm seeing these things right when I'm starting to unpack these very systems that cause such neglect and such harm and such violence. And I'm also seeing what senior care looks like at this time and how neglected seniors are in the US and isolated, and families, you know, caring for their loved ones in this way are really fending for themselves with no support and financially being like robbed. To see like that the most affordable place my mom and I could find for my grandpa was 10,000 G's a month. This is when I started posting significantly less. I pretty much only posted when I had a campaign because I still had deadlines. I still had, you know, bills to pay at this time, but I knew I was wanting to get out of this industry. I just kind of got derailed by life. But prior to all of this kind of falling down all around, I had already gone to an interior design conference because I thought, oh, maybe I'll just do interior design since this home decor thing's going well. But the minute all the women I met at that started talking about, while I was starting my business, my husband thankfully, you know, took care of everything so that I was able to reinvest back into my business and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, over and over and over again, each of these interior designers pretty much made it very clear that they were financially supported by their spouse while they were building out their business. And I was like, well, this is not practical. And then also the more time I spent there, the more I realized I don't want to be working for wealthy people. Like, I really do have no interest in helping them make their homes nicer. I don't. Around this time, I also had started watching a content creator named Johnny Harris. I don't really fuck with him anymore. Not my cup of tea for, you know, understanding systems of oppression. I think his videos are quite sensational and they're very, very well produced, but I think they can keep people in confusion, much like NPR. It's not actually directing people towards meaningful change and embodied liberation that better protects the planet and people and future generations. It's kind of just like chatter for chatter's sake. I say that to say I was watching his content and I saw that he had his degree in international peace relations, and I was like, whoa, this is sounding like something I could get into. So I start researching that, looking at programs, and thinking I'm gonna go back to school for this. Thank goodness the universe was like, snap out of it! Look at that! Things just kept collapsing all around me in my personal life. That bought me time to realize the scam that is higher education as well. No disrespect, but for the state that we're in right now, all that time that I would spend to get a degree just to participate in this very same harmful, violent, extractive system that is causing mass suffering globally, I don't know if that is like the most practical route for me to take personally right now. I kind of put a pause on trying to figure out what I was gonna do next because I just desperately wanted to get out of influencing, but instead I just started lowering my expenses more and more. I started downsizing and I just trusted eventually I would find an exit strategy. In March of 2022, my grandpa ended up passing away, and then after he passed, then my grandma's health on the other side of my family started declining even more rapidly. repeatedly, and we had other like scary drama kind of going on that I still haven't really processed, if I'm gonna be honest. Then after my grandpa passed, one of my godmothers, who was like truly a second mother to me, passed. Then my mom's partner passed. Then my grandma passed. Whatever is in my mom and I's chart for 2022 was crazy. The amount of loss we were experiencing in a short period of time. Granted, now that I'm seeing the type of suffering that goes on in the world, I'm like, oh, okay, plenty of people experience this in many ways, but still, for us, it was our first time experiencing that level of loss back to back to back. And I did not know how to show up on the internet as my little like happy-go-lucky, posy vibe black girl self. Even though I've always kept it real on this channel and have been pretty transparent about the reality of the things happening in the world around us and trying to honor that reality and help us give ourselves permission to move a little slower while we try to navigate what to do. Even still, I just did not know how to be in this space while grieving that much and also learning so much about how we got to this point. Living in LA, seeing with my eyes every day the amount of neglect people were experiencing. So many people are denied the means to live, and that is, you know, heartbreaking. It is truly heartbreaking, and I did not know what to do with all of the things happening everywhere at once, all around, while being in this relationship that was struggling, while trying to, you know, navigate grief, while wanting to exit from my career. I didn't have any like pleasure practices to help me soothe my nervous system, soothe my overwhelm, and kind of heal from the harm that white-bodied supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism had created within me. Also, I didn't mention during this time, as I was becoming more aware, I also was like crashing out. Like, I was definitely crashing out. I couldn't have a single conversation without talking about, you know, what I was learning. And I don't think that was a bad thing. I think this is a very normal part of a lot of people's process when you go from being unaware to aware of systems. It's easy to kind of start trying to force your loved ones and other people in your life to, you know, be on the exact same timeline you are and to see things that you're seeing.
You are under spells, people. You're under spell.
But that's not really honoring where they're at, and it's also not honoring where you're at, because you're exerting all of this energy that could be tending to your inner garden and tending to, you know, the collective in a more tangible way. I didn't have those outlets yet. At this point, the loved ones have passed, and we're kind of just picking up the pieces. The more I looked around, the more I just didn't see the point of being here. Like, I genuinely just didn't want to be here. And I know this is actually a common experience for people who are aware of systems and who are not, because the reality is we are being denied the means to live, time to do what we need to be doing to contribute to our collective well-being, but also time to care for ourselves and our loved ones in meaningful ways, times to be people who are contributing to, you know, our community's well-being, time to just be still, things that help us not create more harm and violence. Yeah, I think I started to feel deep levels of hopelessness and despair and kind of like, well, what's the fucking point? After a while of having these like suicidal ideation thoughts over and over and over again, like every day, it was kind of all I could think about. Thankfully, I had a friend who had already experienced this, and I finally gave her a call, and she was super helpful in getting loved ones who were on the West Coast to find ways to get me the help I needed. Thankfully, I was in the position to be able to not only get the help I needed and get medicated, but also to take the time to just be a zombie for a second yeah, that in itself was a luxury. But I think after living a life of being such posy vibes, it was just such a stark contrast. A lot changed in a very short period of time. So I think I was honestly in like shock and had a bit of like analysis paralysis, honestly. And so, and my mom during that time flew out from the East Coast and spent some time with me. Between the medication and support from loved ones, I was able to get back to like a place where I was, you know, functioning again. This is when I did start creating videos again, and I was showing a lot of my kind of purging process of purging what was in my home that I had acquired from my influencer life. The things that I had filled my life with, things that made me desirable or worthy or successful, whatever. They were just things that actually had nothing to do with my interest or things that I found beautiful. It was just what I'd been told to like. And so I started purging, and then this is when I also started thrifting for the first time and kind of just going to little local thrift stores and markets and finding stuff that had more character, more charm, and I started finding my own personal style, which was really fun. And this also was the time when I started listening to community funded radio, because I thrifted a radio, and that was pivotal, because prior to that I had only ever heard paid media, but I had never come across community funded radio. And this is not public funded radio like NPR. This is community funded. So the stations I was listening to were under a network called Pacifica. You can listen to it from your phone, from your computer. I highly recommend putting on KPFK or KPFA. Just putting it on, you know, while you're doing the dishes, while you're cleaning, when you're driving. And it was just a really educational time, because they have radio shows where there's like an hour where, you know, indigenous people are talking about what challenges their communities are facing and what's being done to help, where people from the African diaspora were sharing and I was learning from them. Workers' rights radio hours where I was hearing from people who are in unions. They have so many amazing shows. This was my first time hearing music from around the world, like not CIA funded music, not corporate funded music, but like music that literally is in your soul. Art that actually reflects the times. And this is when I started to feel new forms of release, because I felt way less alone and less isolated. Yeah, I didn't feel crazy because there were people, you know, on this radio station that's been around since the 60s, standing on business and talking about these systems of harm and violence that are destroying our entire planet, our, you know, relationships, our connections to self, to nature, to each other, and destroying and robbing future generations and robbing our futures as well, just so that a few people can line their pockets. During this time, I stopped checking social media after 5 p.m. I just said, no, I'm not going to open up Instagram after that hour. And I think also I wouldn't open TikTok after this hour. So the only, you know, apps I was using were Pinterest and YouTube, because YouTube, there were deeper dives and I could actually learn about other things, and Pinterest was just inspiring. We're still in 2023. I was pretty certain I was going to be walking away soon. I just needed to like figure out how much money I needed to save. During the spring and summer of 2023 is when I was finding all these alternatives. This is when I started, you know, saying, you know what? I got God, but I'm not going to get God again. Like, you're not going to get me again. And this is when I also started asking, like, okay, bet, like, I've seen all I need to see, and we're gonna have to shift and pivot. And I started asking myself, like, okay, well, what is being done? What is there to do about the situation? And I had the time, I had the money, had the resources and the capacity. So I was like, you know what? How about I just like test it out myself? What if I just tried to test out breaking up with and divorcing from these systems of harm? How doable is it? Like, is it really that difficult, or are we like truly doomed? Like, what are our options here? This was pivotal because for the first time I was like taking my power back, and I truly felt empowered and realized like I don't have to keep participating in these cycles of harm. Not that I can leave them and be completely useless tomorrow, but I can at least experiment and see what aligns with my current capacity. Like, what's currently on my plate that could maybe take a back seat for a moment so I could try something else out that is more life-giving, more sustainable. And so I started kind of doing this little experiment, and it started with the purging, but then I came across the concept of mutual aid, and I finally looked up like mutual aid networks in LA and went to my first events. That was so life-changing and rewired my brain in so many ways, because for the first time I was seeing like an example of community care that was truly everyday people coming together saying, today you, tomorrow me, and like redistributing goods within the community to take care of each other. This is when I started learning about tenants unions, which the mutual aid networks help people in the city form tenants unions. I also started learning about unionizing in general, labor unions, and I started learning about free economies and gift economies, the library economy, the solidarity economy. And you know, we can talk about those things more in future videos, but I just finally started meeting the people who are already living in ways beyond systems of harm, and who've been living in ways beyond system of harm, and who are on the front lines of building and creating that safer, more just, everything for everyone world that we desperately, you know, deserve and need, and will have to shift towards if we care about, you know, vulnerable populations, the world's children, seniors, our loved ones, ourselves, the planet, future generations, the whole gambit. I don't even know what gambit means. I hope I use that word correctly.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
Okay, my battery died, and I also changed a setting, so if the lighting looks different, that's why. Spring, summer 2023. This is also when I started listening to a great podcast. Like, honestly, if I had to pick, you know, 5 things for you to engage with in order to move your liberation journey in, you know, the best case scenario, you know, route as possible, I would pick Upstream as like number 1, along with community funded radio, a podcast called Blowback. These are spaces that are doing a great job at helping us unlearn and reimagine and better understand not only how these systems work, but what options we have beyond them, and how to truly fall in love with the future. Fall of 2023 rolls around, and this is when I start coming across language about decentering, being chosen by men. And my relationship was already hanging on for dear life at this point for a multitude of reasons, but then I came across this concept, and I had realized that a lot of the pressure I was putting in our relationship and on it, and, you know, onto romantic connections in general, was because of this obsession that I'd been taught to have from a very young age, to be obsessed with being chosen by a man and to having male validation and male approval. And I realized, like, wow, I really fell for that. And also it's led me to harbor a lot of resentment and anger and hurt towards the men in my life who I felt hadn't chosen me, whether it was my father or grandfathers or other guys I dated. It led me to being like super triggered by literally anything. At this time, thankfully, I also had started like going on walks a lot and stretching a lot, and I was spending less time on social media. So I was developing pleasure practices for the first time. Then October of 2023 came around, and I remember I was on vacation with my mom, my auntie, and my bestie. And that is when my entire world changed again. Just like for many of us, that was when I first ever learned about Palestine. I had not known what had happened to Palestinian people prior to this, but after October 7th, it was so easy to understand what had happened to Palestinian people in the last century, because it was a rinse and repeat. It was the exact same scenario that has happened to the global majority at the hands of the West over and over and over and over again. As much as people wanted to say it was a complex issue, it was not complex at all. Also, as a Black woman, I saw my people and our struggle and our history in their story as well. We all are Palestinian under these systems of harm and violence and extraction that only worship capital, that take resources and sacrifice everyday lives, wiping out bloodlines, destroying land. At times I'm like, are y'all really from this planet? Those who are okay with just destroying the planet.
Are you not embarrassed? This is really embarrassing.
As I started to learn more about Palestine, learn more about Zionism, as I started to understand like, oh, like our tax dollars are funding genocide? Oh, our tax dollars have funded other genocides? Are funding other genocide? Like, it was like, okay. And it was a wrap. It was a wrap. I contacted my manager and I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna walk away. And I did. I walked away from the brand deals that I had lined up. I don't think there was an easy way to go about it. Like, there was no way I was about to keep posting about buy this, swipe up, do this, do that during this time. Absolutely not. Thankfully, I had already known I was going to be walking away eventually, so I had already been moving differently with my finances, so that way I would have a little cushion. I then tried to start something called the Conscious Creators, where I was trying to get other content creators to have a more organized front on how we help our audiences be better informed about whether it was Palestine, Congo, Haiti, Hawaii, Korea, whatever it may be, was trying to help that front. And I ended up getting quite a few people who signed up. It was great. We had a few calls, but ultimately it was a very rushed effort and I didn't really have a plan in place. And I thought maybe we could just come together and brainstorm together, but I think it's more helpful when someone comes with a little bit of a plan and then we can brainstorm together. I started looking for somewhere to live, but also this is when Jake and I, we were this was the end for us. Shit was really starting to fall apart. This is also a time when I had decided that I was gonna go spend some time in Portugal because I wanted to observe some of the alternative ways of living that I was learning about. And I had found out about Workaway, which is just a way to exchange your labor for housing and food, which I have mixed opinions about now, but that's for another video yet again. But I was wanting to do something like that. January, I was about to sign up the lease, but then at the last minute, things fell apart. It didn't end up being the best fit for me and probably for all of us. Literally, I had 2 weeks to be out of my apartment, and I tried to find somewhere else to live, but ultimately I ended up deciding this doesn't make sense to rush. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna put my stuff in storage. I'm gonna go live at home for a little bit, go to Portugal. My ex was really helpful. We had come up with this whole plan. And my last couple weeks in LA were pretty crazy because things fell through with the apartment. We had the most horrible time moving me out, awful. It was a disaster. Everything was falling apart. It was pouring, raining. If it could go wrong, it went wrong. That poor man. We actually ended up, I think 2 days after he moved me out of my apartment, that's when we ended up breaking up. Yeah, even though I think I had mourned the relationship a few times already because of other challenges we had, it just hits different when a chapter truly closes. I ended up putting my stuff in storage in LA, flying back to the East Coast, moving in with my mom, and my aunt was actually living with my mom at the time, so it was a fun time. But I was navigating heartbreak January through March of 2024. This is when I started like kind of really getting into astrology and meditation, and I started listening to Thich Nhat Hanh. I highly recommend The Art of Living and The Art of Communicating. Really phenomenal books that helped give me a lot of context around our interconnectedness, and also brought me just a lot of peace during a time when I was navigating loss. Even though, you know, a breakup isn't the same as someone dying, it is a death cycle. Then I ended up going to Portugal. This was a time for me to be alone. Like really, I think deep down, I just wanted to, for the first time, be on my own, and I wanted to just see alternative ways of living. While I was there, I backpacked the whole time, and I ended up living in off-grid spaces pretty much the entire time. I either stayed in hostels or I stayed like on an off-grid property where I was using compost toilets and all of that, and living off of solar energy only, and eating fresh fruit off of the land. It was a really amazing experience. Now, it was a bit of a mind fuck because, of course, I had recently learned about the history of Portugal, and I'm like, oh, you guys are like some of the OGs who were doing some real fuck shit. Like, okay, this is a bit crazy to be here. It ended up being a life-changing experience. I ended up attending like a silent meditation retreat, which I have all types of thoughts and opinions about, you know, the spirituality space and the retreat space that is often like quite exclusive and not actually that accessible to many people. But I found some spaces that actually were the best fit for me at that time. Like maybe we could do another video and talk about it, but it was 7 days of silence. It never stops. Wow. It's chilly, chilly, chilly. Come hang out with us. Oh yeah, they're German horses.
Not the other ones.
Wow, you're looking into my soul. But anyway, John Mulaney, Pee Pee Poppy,
and Nick Kroll, the Independent Spirit Awards, which is like the Oscars for independent movies, kind of is the vibe. It's the same time as the Oscars.
I pretty much have spent 2024 investigating these alternatives that I had started looking into in 2023, and spending time better understanding things like the solidarity economy and understanding spaces that are living beyond these systems of oppression. navigating trying to divest and boycott and be as useless to systems of harm as possible. The good news is, when I say we have every reason to have hope, I'm not being dramatic. Like, we have every reason to have hope. There are people who are already living, practicing, and embodying that safer, more just, everything for everyone type world. And they've created blueprints for us and are ready and waiting for more of us to give less of our energy to sounding the alarm and hearing the alarm sounds constantly, and more to embodied action and an actual liberatory practice, a lifestyle and ways of thinking and being that actually align with our core values and who we are. There's so much that is working in our favor. Most of my time now is spent actually kind of building out this worker self-directed nonprofit. I am really thankful for the people who really fuck with what I'm trying to do and who have just like joined in and have treated it like it's their baby as well. And we are a marketing collective that is going to be building out campaigns for grassroots spaces that are already on the front lines of creating this safer, more just, everything for everyone world that we need and long for. These campaigns will be also connecting them with online educators and liberation content creators who have done such amazing work helping a lot of us who did not know about Palestine or white-bodied supremacy or how patriarchy works, or what actual collective action looks like. They've been doing a lot of that labor for free and not getting compensated. Our hope is to get funding to actually pay them to then sponsor and tell their audiences about these grassroots spaces that system-weary people who are watching their content are longing to know, what can we do? What is there to do beyond voting harder and donating and reposting? As great as all of that is, it is not going to save us or the children of this world. And we are the ones we've been waiting for. We have everything we need within us and amongst ourselves to start protecting the collective good and to be better ancestors and to practice being better earthlings and to practice being useless to systems of harm. I know it's possible because I've seen it in my own day-to-day life as an ex-mega consumer and someone who had so many comforts and conveniences. I wouldn't trade what my life is like now for that ever. I just wouldn't. I've experienced so much delight and depth and deeper connections with myself, with the earth, with other beings, and so much clarity has come in direction and purpose. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to break up with these systems, but I can say that it gets easier every single time that you try. I don't shoot for perfection ever, and the journey is not linear. It is very cyclical. You're constantly going to be coming back to things that you thought you already figured out or you already put down or you already healed from. No, it is, you will be plopped right back to reality real quick. The nice thing is every time you're, on those spirals, you have more tools in your toolbox to help you along the way. What really helped me is saying like, okay, before I make a decision, what are my best, better, and good option? But you're not always going to be able to choose the best, better, or good option, whether you're trying to make a more sustainable option or whether you're trying to divest, whether you're trying to make an option that's better for your mental, physical, or spiritual health. But what you can do is just become more aware of those options so that when the opportunities arise, you can assess your capacity in that moment, take a look at your bandwidth, and then decide, okay, which option am I going to go with? And there are going to be times where you're just going to have to choose the not great option, but it'll be easier the more you practice. And it's truly like the most liberating experience. Like, I've never felt so light and free and just like open and full of just like so much pleasure and joy. Let's not get it twisted. Like, I feel a lot of the suffering that's happening around us and in the lives of my loved ones. I think that is a natural human thing, to feel the pain of the world and to grieve that. And I think we have to feel it. Like, at some point, we cannot keep running from the rage within. We have to, like, literally just crash out, bro. Crash the fuck out. Like, my crash outs have all led to breakthroughs that have then led to clarity and direction and peace and pleasure and play and delight and like good fucking times. Even though, yes, we are bearing witness to like unimaginable suffering every single day, but I hope to share some of the little tricks that have helped me kind of navigate not turning away from the realities of this moment, but also turning that anger, that hurt, that frustration, that rage, everything towards meaningful change and embodied action and integrating, just liberatory practices. Thank you for holding space with me and taking time to hear about this journey. For anyone who made it this far in the video, like, can you please drop something down below to let me know you made it to this point? Thank you for whatever ways that you are integrating more liberation, more peace, more healing into your life, for the ways that you're just choosing to show up, whatever they may be. That is what it's gonna take. A bunch of us showing up in different ways that align with our capacities, and it's just gonna keep snowballing. Because the system's already crumbling all around. Like, they're literally tumbling, stumbling. It's pretty crazy how many options we have, babes. I'm pretty stoked. I will see you when I have the capacity to connect again. The hope is that we will be spending less time online and more time embodied and in connection and in community, being the change that we long to see. Move that fascia around, bitch. Bye.